One. Welcome in to the most recent episode, fresh off of the Maui Invitational. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner. That is Big East Ben. This is Need for Seeds. Ben, how you doing?
I've been better.
Yeah, we just came off a pretty tough, huge comeback by Marquette, and we'll let Ben get his as a Marquette family. Essentially, we'll let him get his however long he wants the soapbox to last. But we're going to go through some big games on Thanksgiving and whatever's coming up the rest of the week. Plus, we'll give some best bets end of show. If you're listening on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to YouTube. Leave a 5-star review, like our stuff, subscribe also on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Follow the Twitter account at Need for Seeds, and we will be doing this the rest of the season, hopefully under better circumstances, because Zach Edey was a monster tonight.
Yeah, what do you want me to say? I mean, when Dr. James Naismith invented this game with the dimensions that are still currently played at, he wasn't expecting 7'3" Neanderthals to be walking the court 130 years later. Credit to Purdue. Shot the ball excellent from three. They shot the ball really well from 75 feet, 100%. I'm sure that will translate over to the NCAA tournament when they play North Texas or Stephen F. Austin or Abilene Christian or whatever double-digit seed they want to play it. So good for them. You know, I hope it continues.
Fairleigh Dickinson last year, if you want to revel in that a little bit. What are your thoughts on the performance of Marquette in that game? Because I would agree that Purdue did a great job making a lot of open threes, but that's kind of what they're supposed to do, and that's really what they're built to do. Flank any sort of shooter around Edey, and if he doesn't get to the line, which he does a ridiculous amount for any sort of touch foul for a 7'4" Neanderthal. What do we feel about the Marquette performance? Oso's second foul, which seemed to be a little too aggressive, and then Shaka ultimately sat in for the rest of the first half from what I saw.
Yeah, I mean that was a sign of things to come. That second foul, 40 feet from the basket. I thought the team played well. They had a bunch of open corner threes by the secondary guy, Sean, who I'm not going to fault, but like Sean Jones, who won the. I mean, they wouldn't even have an opportunity to play in this game if it wasn't for Sean Jones, but he missed a bunch of open corner threes. Chase Ross had a couple he missed. Too many fumbles on the offensive rebound, just right in their hands, goes right through, off their crotch, out of bounds. Too many of those. But yeah, I mean, basketball skill-wise, Marquette is leagues away better than Purdue. Purdue shot out of their asses tonight, not just from three, but also Fletcher Lawyer, that guy is really going to do well in Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. He's got the face for it.
He's got the hairline already for a
20-year-old. Yeah. I mean, that guy is. Can we get you into an index fund coming down the pipe? And then Braden Smith, I mean, he was 4 for 4 from three to start. He made a crazy runner under 2 minutes left. So I don't know. I know I'm biased, but I think Marquette wins that game 7.5 times out of 10. I really think they do.
I mean, that sounds excessive to me, but considering the deep hole they're in with their best and most important player on the bench for a very, very long time in the crucial 20 minutes. I remember, I don't know where Doug Gottlieb has been pushed off of mainstream television, but he always used to say, and to me is still one of the best, not really a better, but handicapper of college basketball games. He would always say, you get 5. And unfortunately, I guess in that situation, very high likelihood that Iguodala gets a second foul or third foul, against trying to defend Zach Edey. But it really changed the entire Purdue offense. Another friend of mine was saying that there was a lot of layups that were missed at the rim, and that's because they were all uncontested at the beginning of the game when Oso Iguodala was pulling Zach Edey away from the basket. Unfortunately, the Kiwi Ben Gold is not the same type of backup, but there are reasons why in college basketball there aren't great backup centers. So let's get to some baseball. Wow, baseball. Wow, let's get to some basketball games coming up later this week. And we'll start on Thursday. We'll go through the top ones that Ben picked out, and then we'll give some best bets. Not necessarily on these, but they might come from there. So stay tuned. But we'll go to, it looks like a neutral site, I think in Southern California, Arizona against Michigan State. And somehow Torvik has this as Michigan State -1. I don't know how these numbers are coming at Torvik at this point. They're so off. I'm seeing 5s right now. Is that the number that you like out there?
Yeah, it's looking like 4.5. Ken Palm has at 6. Over under like 145.
Okay. So yes, thank you for reminding me. We should also say the over under because there's not only side players that listen. So Michigan State, I mean, what they do every year is play a juggernaut of a schedule. Arizona usually plays the weakest thing possible. But they did take a trip to Cameron Indoor and won at Duke and what seemed to be a pretty open and shut from start to finish. They seemed to be in the lead the whole way. Why do we think that Arizona struggles here in what should be a pretty good home court advantage for them? Yes, Sparty does travel fairly well, but University of Arizona has the crowd almost every place they play. Maybe not Cameron Indoor, but it didn't seem to phase them there. Why do we think this Michigan State team that's been underachieving for years and years under Tom Izzo, why do we think that they're going to potentially cover this 4.5 type of number? Because it looks like an open 5.5 has fallen a little bit. So the market currently likes Michigan State, and I don't understand it.
Michigan State, they figured some things out. It looks like in the last 2 games, they played a cupcake and then they played Butler, who they blew out. Shooting seems to be regressing back up towards the mean. Mm-hmm. But again, Arizona looks so good in that Duke game. So good. I really don't think.
You think that was Arizona, or you think that was Duke?
I don't think Duke's as good as everyone makes it out to be. That's why I put them at.
They did also beat this Michigan State team, and it really, to me, wasn't. I mean, was it that difficult of a game for Duke? I guess,
but that was Michigan State. They're trying to be bricklayers like they were for the first 3 games of the season. That was I think they were like 2 for 13 in the first half in that game. Yeah, I mean, Duke doesn't impress me.
So we got a 40% effort against Alcorn State and a 35% effort against Butler, both at home. Now they go on a neutral site. I feel like that 35% is probably the maximum you'd expect here. If they shoot well, I think that is the key for Michigan State to somehow pull an upset or at least hang around late enough to potentially dodge some late bullets like the Marquette against the spread did in the Maui Invitational Championship today. That was a pretty nice cover if you got 3.5. I feel like Arizona, they're perennially a team that struggles with guards, and that's what Michigan State should be best at. But Arizona's going to be so much bigger inside. I don't know how Michigan State or what the plan is to do anything to stop Oumar Ballo. I'm not surprised, but I'm guessing you'll like Arizona a little bit here.
I like Arizona. I'm with you. I don't understand why it's 5 points. This Michigan State team was overrated from the start. I think Hogard really overachieved last year. Everyone's talking about Tyson Walker, one of the best point guards in the country. But then you look at it, not to bring up Marquette again, but then you look at a guy like Tyler Kolek, who's like leagues and leagues above him. So I like Arizona. I think Ballo eats. If he doesn't eat, they got the 7-3 kid off the bench from Lithuania, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like Arizona. Probably a, 7-8 point game, stretches maybe to 10-11 in free throws.
Yeah, I might even think it's even more comfortable than that. Yes, it's fairly likely that on a neutral floor it won't go as easily, but I just don't really see a way for Michigan State to compete here. So just based on breaking down a line, since we try to have some gambling aspects, of course, to a gambling podcast, but ultimately a 5-point favorite on a neutral says that Arizona is probably about even or maybe a slight favorite on the road at Michigan State. I think that's reasonable. So this number, I think, even gets bigger by the time it tips off, and it's Arizona or nothing for me. As for total, that 145 number, I've not been great on total so far. So I'm not sure that
Me
there's.
either.
Yeah, I think Michigan State wants to run to try to make this as much of a track meet as possible and use their speed, but what that'll ultimately do is only put Arizona in a better position to stretch out their advantages. And I just don't really see a path to victory here for Michigan State unless they shoot really well, which I don't believe will happen. So we'll move next to Oklahoma and Iowa. A little bit different in terms of perennial power. So Oklahoma actually picked. Do you want to guess what place they're picked to finish in the Big 12 this year? Last edition of the Big 12. Actually 12, whatever, however many teams are in it, 12 out of 12, I believe. So expected to finish last according to the coach's poll that I saw a little bit earlier. So a lot of changes for a team that's run by Porter Moser, who's claim to fame came with taking Loyola Chicago to the Final Four, and then nothing has really gone right since then. He was good still at Loyola, but it's a little different running back screens and having a point forward, point center essentially at this level. So I'm not really sure where Oklahoma is headed. I know they're moving to the SEC, where basketball is all of a sudden an important thing to that conference. I'm not loving it, but they're off to a 4-0 start, playing the Sisters of the Poor, as Bill Walton called it, all night on whatever broadcast I was watching in Maui a couple days ago.
The UCLA Marquette game.
Yes, that was the one. Yes, Sisters, and he's actually saying about UCLA's schedule. So probably would say the same thing with Central Michigan. I guess they're a little bit better this year, but then 354th ranked Mississippi Valley State, then Texas State, and topped it off with UT Rio Grande Valley. So a lot of bye games flowing into the Texas college system. On the other side, Iowa did challenge themselves. They went on the road to Creighton, and I thought played a pretty competitive game. I'm not sure if you caught that one, Big East Ben, but it was ultimately an 8-point loss, but that gets skewed by fouls, as we mentioned towards the end. I'll give a number right now, and then you can tell me how you feel about it. Currently a pick'em, actually, at the Lion Tree Arena in San Diego, California. Oklahoma, I guess I guess at pick'em, there's no real favorite here. Totals 159.5, likely due to Iowa being a run and gun team. But my takeaway from that Creighton game, which I think you did watch, because I remember a comment you made, I might be stealing your thunder, but I do remember a long 2 offense from Iowa.
I didn't look at the shot chart.
Okay.
I did catch the tail end last 10 minutes. I was very impressed with Iowa. That's probably the top, I don't know, 5 toughest places to play. United Health Center in Omaha.
Let's call it
Something.
It's not Pinnacle Bank, because that's Omaha, or because that's where Lincoln, Nebraska. That's where University of Nebraska plays. I'll look it up. You keep going with your Creighton talks, because honestly, the loss of Arthur Kaluma was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And he's been playing well for Kansas State. Yeah, Kansas State.
Yes,
He's been playing well for
State.
Kansas State. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
thinking of the Kansas State Providence game. He played really well. And yeah, I like Iowa in this one. I think Oklahoma's again one of those teams where it's like they play in the Big 12. Every game is like a quad one game, and they are bound to steal a few. They're a product of the conference. They're not a product of being a very good team. Not, it's not like they're bringing a lot of guys back. I think Porter Moser is that was, I know he's a Creighton guy, but that was a strange move to take that job. I never understood why he took that job.
To take the Oklahoma job, you're saying?
Correct.
I think it's because he didn't get enough bites when he was at Loyola Chicago. I think a lot of people didn't believe in him, and Oklahoma all of a sudden had Lon Kruger retire, and we're like, what do we do here? I don't know that it was a great fit. 5-13 in the Big 12 last season, which I feel like was last place as well. And I don't know if the seat is warm, because OU doesn't really care, in my experience, about basketball, like hardly at all. But yeah, not great, tied for last with Texas Tech last season.
Yeah. I'll go with the Hawkeyes, and I would also parlay that with the over, because most likely those are going to be correlated.
Okay. So that's one interesting to me because I was going to say I like Iowa here, but I actually like under 155 and a half or 159 and a half, excuse me, is gigantic, of course. But putting that aside, it feels to me that, I mean, based on Porter Moser's roots, he was a grind it, try to slow the game as much as possible back to his Loyola Chicago days. Maybe he's changed that. I mean, we see a lot of high numbers in the game so far with Oklahoma. And Iowa have actually scored 88 in all of their wins so far, 84 in their loss at Creighton. So some pretty good, I think, points being scored potentially from an Iowa point of view. But neutral court, two teams that I don't think shoot the three very well. Iowa's got some numbers to do it, but I think maybe it was my takeaway then from that Creighton matchup that they literally were going to live on Ben Krikke or Long Twos, which is their center this year. I don't really know a ton of their backcourt. It's kind of new names to me. So that's a question and maybe makes the Oklahoma chances a little bit better. But Pick'em seems too short to me. Torvik, for whatever he's worth at this point in the season, which I'm not saying is much, he has Iowa 1.5 point favorite essentially. So I think my interest in that one is to Iowa, but I also like under. I just feel like maybe this is a really high scoring game. I just feel like in neutral courts, it's really hard to find any points. So we'll move next to our third game of the night, and then we'll get to best bets. So hang around with us. Thank you if you're tuning in on YouTube. Please hit subscribe for an Apple Podcast or on Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. Be huge to get us up to search rankings. If you're not a member of my Patreon yet, check it out. Patreon.com, just a real _G Warner. And of course, follow us on Twitter at Need for Seeds, at Big East Ben, and myself, yours truly, at the real _G Warner. So we'll move to Ohio State, and they are playing Alabama on a neutral site. I think it was in Gulf Shores or something like that, and in Florida, potentially closer to Alabama. But I imagine they care a little bit about that football game with Auburn this weekend. So I'm not sure there's a huge traveling fan base. What we have, I don't think we have a line on this one yet because this is a Friday matchup. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
KenPom has it at Tide -9, Torvik Tide -5.
Wow, big discrepancies. Eventually, those numbers will start to get closer, but it's kind of amazing. In the past, everyone opened numbers off of KenPom and then adjusted based on bets that were taken. I'm not sure if I haven't been playing as many of the openers in this current form of my life. I'd like to get more into that as we go down, especially. I really like it in conference tournament plays, and this also these neutral tournaments. But I was expecting that Alabama would be a favorite in that region. I think I want to say I had 6, maybe something like that. Yeah, I had 6 when I was guessing. So fortunately not as embarrassing as the Syracuse and Tennessee guess from last weekend that I got you sure from my co-host. Thank you for that, by the way.
Are you sure about that?
Give me a chance to cover myself in glory. Though Syracuse were kind of hanging around and look if they might even cover that number, and I was definitely to come on here and say they should have listened to me with the number, but didn't happen. So forget that. Never happened. So for this one, we got Alabama 6-point favorite. Ohio State certainly had that loss at home to Texas A&M, which seemed pretty challenging to me. Really good, I think, to start your year, even taking a loss at home, getting a good team in there. Alabama has been playing, I think, a decent Indiana State team. South Alabama lost so much from last year. Mercer, a perennial good program in a small conference. And then Morehead State, who just aren't really the same as they were a few years ago when Janai Broome was there before transferring to Auburn. So this might be one of those like tough experiences, tough starts potentially for Alabama because they have to start with a pretty talented team that should be somewhat close to par, or at least on their level. Clearly, if we're making this a 6-point spread or as high as 9 with KenPom, then that's not a great sign for potentially Ohio State winning this game. But what do you think about that Texas A&M matchup? Do you feel like it puts Ohio State in a better position to compete here? And how competitive do you think they'll be?
Yeah, definitely. Having that experience against Buzz's guys where they hung tough till the end. I know it was a 7-point game, but yeah, under 2 minutes, it was a 1-possession game. I think that gives them a clear advantage, especially when you factor in Alabama lost 8 out of their 10 top guys last year. So basically experience, continuity, when the season's said and done, I would probably expect Alabama to be higher seeded than Ohio State at the end of the year.
Agreed.
But for now, early season, one team's played a real team, one team hasn't. One team has brought back a decent amount of guys. One team hasn't. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes covering the number.
All right. So let's take 6 to potentially 9 points on Ohio State in that one. I don't know that I'll get involved. I do feel like as the number gets higher, of course, the higher my interest will grow in Ohio State. I'll also say the number for this one, just based on the Torvik projection, should put it about 150, which after speaking about 159.5 for the Porter Moser game, it's amazing to me that that number is as high as it is. But there should be a lot more defense potentially played in this one because these two teams are built to defend. Though Alabama on the other side, they really want to run and gun and shoot threes. So there's a large variance, large potential for different outcomes for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So let's get to our best bets. I'll let you, Benny Boy, lead us off at Big East Ben on Twitter, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I've let everyone down in best bets this year, 0-2, betting totals. So I'm going to stick away from that. Just I might add, I'm 7-3 overall. So there's that.
Perfect on Big East bets on this podcast. So
and still shooting Jones's percentage from 75 feet on Big East best bets. My best bet, which you can also interpret as a Big East bet, I am going Florida Atlantic -5 against Butler. The game against Bryant was I can't explain it. I think that causes Dusty May to light a fire under the guys. Like, you lost to this like crappy team whose coach left in the middle left a week ago. The Grasso, the Italian guy,
when he asked when he asked the police officer if he wanted to shoot some jumpers in his backyard or something. Yeah, good,
yeah.
Nice move. Yeah.
So I mean, I think Florida Atlantic rolls in this. Butler is after watching the bet, especially against Michigan State, I think it's same old 9th, 10th place Butler that we've seen the last couple of years. Pasha Alexander isn't fixing things, and I think they get steamrolled by the Owls.
So this is Need for Seeds on the Betting the Pat. We'll start that over. This is Need for Seeds on the Betting the Pitch podcast network. I'm your host, _G Warner. You just heard at Big East Ben give his best bet 1-0 on Big East picks this season. He went with Florida Atlantic FAU, a 5-point favorite against Butler and the State Farm Fieldhouse. I'm gonna stay.
The game's also in Kissimmee, Florida. So
there we go.
I don't know how far that is from Boca Raton, but I know Boca Raton is closer to Kissimmee than Indianapolis. I'm positive of that, actually.
There we go. Closer in the same state than Indiana to Florida. Good to know. So for my best bet, since I've lost already 35 seconds, I'm going to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes, a pick 'em to Oklahoma. Not a believer in Porter Moser. I think his days are numbered. I think that road trip to Creighton is going to do pay a lot of dividends for Iowa, who will go in there and probably get a technical from their head coach, but will be enough to cover a pick'em spread. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch on the Betting the Pitch Network, the Need for Seeds podcast. Thank you, of course, to everyone for your support. Appreciate if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe for an Apple Podcast or Spotify, leave a 5-star review so you just get other college basketball fans into the Need for Seeds Lifetime Edition. Also, we'll try to have Big East Ben give more soapbox soliloquies on his Marquette fanhood, because it is going to be a wild ride for this season. Expectations are high. Performances have been good. We thought we might get a number 1 seed if they got a win today, but a loss in the championship against a 7'4" Neanderthal. You can't really poison the water too much over that. So we'll see if Ozo Ikedaro can potentially grow from this, stay out of foul trouble in his few Big East games that are coming down the line. But I'll let you have the final word, Ben, and you can sign us off.
Happy Thanksgiving, Griffin.
Thank you, Ben. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate, and make sure you at least say hi to your family a little bit so you can get back to the basketball games. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week on Need for Seeds podcast.